Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that Church President George Albert Smith overcame blindness to lead millions and serve others with kindness every day? Learn how, as a young boy, a small act of courage led to a lifetime of leadership and compassion. Discover that he supervised the publication of the Book of Mormon in Braille and lived by the creed, "I would be a friend to the friendless."
So when you picture a historical titan, right, like someone who just leaves this massive global footprint on the world.
Oh, sure. You usually picture, like, this iron constitution.
Exactly. You picture a total bulldozer of a human being, someone who just bends history through sheer physical stamina and, I don't know, an unbreakable will.
Right, the classic conqueror archetype.
Yeah. But today, we are diving into a stack of biographical accounts and historical diaries that completely dismantle that whole idea. We're doing a deep dive into the life of George Albert Smith.
The 8th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's the one. And our mission today, the whole reason we're looking at this, is to explore this really profound paradox. We're talking about a man who was plagued by chronic illness, a super frail body, severe vision loss.
Oh, major vision loss, yeah.
Right. And yet somehow he managed to travel over 1 million miles and become this sort of global architect of radical kindness. I mean, it's like a superhero story, but his power wasn't superhuman strength, it was his profound fragility.
I love that analogy because we do, like you said, we naturally associate massive impact with physical dominance. It's just ingrained in how we study history.
Totally.
But Smith's trajectory, it requires a completely different framework. His early physical limitations and just that persistent fragility, they didn't hinder his leadership. They actually forged it.
Really? Like built the empathy from the ground up.
Exactly. His physical vulnerability was the exact mechanism that built his structural strength as a leader. It's fascinating.
So let's start at the beginning, right, where this intersection of ambition and physical limitation really kicks off. He was born in April 1870 in Salt Lake City, Utah.
And right away, you see this tension.
Yeah, because he's this kid who desperately wants to engage with the world dynamically. The records actually show he loved swimming, he loved horseback riding.
Oh, yeah, he was very active in his mind and spirit.
But his body was fundamentally frail. I mean, he suffered from chronic eye and heart problems right from the start.
Right, so you have a mind that just wants to sprint, but a body that constantly enforces boundaries. And within that tension, a very specific type of observation develops,
What do you mean?
Well, when you can't just physically power your way through the world, you have to learn how to navigate it through deep interpersonal connection. You start really paying attention to the invisible currents between people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that attention to connection shows up remarkably early for him, like at just 5 years old.
The beehive house story?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so picture this. His mother sends him on an errand to deliver a note to President Brigham Young at the Beehive House.
Who is a massive figure.
Right, so picture this tiny, physically frail 5-year-old walking up to the gate of literally one of the most powerful men in the region.
A daunting task for anyone, let alone a kindergartner.
Seriously. So the watchman stops him, asks his business, and predictably just dismisses him. He basically says, look, Brigham Young does not have time to see a small boy.
Which, I mean, the watchman's logic is entirely sound from an administrative perspective. Brigham Young was the president of a rapidly growing church, and he was the governor of the territory.
Right, he's basically running a nation state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
His schedule was built around managing settlements, politics, literal survival. A random child with a note just does not factor into that equation at all.
But then Brigham Young himself disrupts the whole equation.
He does.
He walks out, he hears the exchange, and he tells the watchman to show the boy in. And George Albert Smith's own recollections detail what happened next.
It's wild. Brigham Young takes this 5-year-old by the hand, leads him into his office, sits at his desk.
Just completely stops what he's doing.
Right. He lifts the boy onto his knee, but puts an arm around him and asks, "What do you want of President Young?"
The contrast in scale there is just, that's what matters so much. You have a man holding immense territorial and spiritual authority, treating a totally insignificant child with the dignity of, like, a visiting governor.
And this interaction effectively becomes Smith's lifelong blueprint. It mapped out the exact distance between power and vulnerability for him.
It showed him that true authority bridges that distance with undivided attention. But, okay, wait. I do have to challenge the narrative just a little bit here.
Sure, go ahead.
It's a great cinematic moment, right?
Yeah.
But he was 5 years old. I mean, most of us cannot recall a single continuous narrative from when we were 5, let alone extract this foundational leadership philosophy from it that lasts for decades.
That is a very fair point. A single childhood memory definitely requires rigorous reinforcement to become a whole adult philosophy.
Right. So where did the reinforcement come from?
It arrived a bit later when he was 12 years old, attending Brigham Young Academy. His instructor was Dr. Carl G. Mazur.
Okay.
And Dr. Mazur delivered this psychological framework that essentially locked that early empathy into place.
So,
He taught these young students a principle that is honestly terrifying, but also incredibly empowering. He told them, you are accountable not just for the actions you take, but for the very thoughts you think.
whoa. Cognitive accountability.
Exactly.
That completely removes the entire concept of just performing kindness.
Right, because it demands an internal landscape of genuine empathy. If you are accountable for your silent, invisible thoughts, you can't just act appropriately when the public is watching and call it good.
You can't fake it.
No, you can't. Dr. Mazur was teaching him that true character is cognitive discipline. Empathy isn't just this passive emotion you feel when it's convenient. It is a rigorous internal standard you have to maintain.
And man, that internal standard was tested almost immediately in the real world, like in a purely economic arena.
Oh, the ZCMI story.
Yeah. So when George was 13, his father, John Henry Smith, was called to serve as president of the European mission.
Which means the primary breadwinner is suddenly an ocean away.
Exactly. And a 13-year-old boy suddenly has to help provide for the family. So he goes to ZCMI, which was this church-owned manufacturing plant and department store, to ask for a job.
And the manager rejects him flat out.
Yep, manager is super blunt. He basically says, look, we literally cannot afford to hire anyone right now.
Citing a budget deficit, yeah. But George just shifts the entire metric of value right there.
Right. He tells the manager, I only asked to work, not to be paid. And then he drops this incredible line. He says, I know that if I'm worth anything, I'll get paid.
I mean,
Think about the last time you had to negotiate your worth to an employer, you know. Doing that at 13 years old, driven by family necessity, that takes a staggering level of self-assurance.
it really does. It's an incredibly high-stakes, unpaid internship, basically.
Yes, he effectively dared the manager to just watch him labor. And it worked. He was eventually hired at $2.50 a week, and he advanced rapidly.
Because he bypassed the bureaucratic limitation by treating his own effort as currency. He knew his attitude and his labor had intrinsic value.
Value that the market or the factory manager would eventually have to recognize.
Right. And what's amazing is he applied this exact same strategy of defining his own worth a few years later.
During his courtship with Lucy Woodruff.
Yes, exactly.
So Lucy had her pick of suitors. The diaries note she had wealthy admirers who were offering her extravagant gifts.
And George Albert Smith did not possess that kind of financial leverage.
Not at all. He couldn't compete on material terms. So what does he do? He completely bypasses the financial competition. He flips the script.
By writing that letter.
Right. He writes her a letter that establishes a completely different value proposition.
He draws a really definitive line in the sand regarding his whole life's trajectory.
Yeah, he tells her directly that if she wants to marry for money, he isn't the right choice. He actually writes, and I'm quoting here, I have long ago decided that I will not devote myself or my life or my time to making money, but toward serving the Lord and toward helping his children in this world.
He is offering her a partnership in a life of service. The ambition he brings to the table isn't about accumulating wealth, it's about scaling compassion.
Oh, I like that phrasing, scaling compassion.
Yeah, he's asking her to buy into a shared vision of the future where their primary objective is the welfare of other people.
And she chose that vision. They were married in the Manti, Utah temple on May 25, 1892. And her own diary entries revealed just how deeply his internal character resonated with her.
What does she write?
She called him one of the best young men that was ever placed on the earth, and she noted that his goodness and kindness brought tears to her eyes.
Wow.
She even gave him the small locket containing her picture, and he attached it to his pocket watch chain and wore it close to his heart nearly every day for the rest of his life.
That locket is such a physical manifestation of their operational partnership, and, their marriage was tested on this front instantly.
Right, because they were separated pretty much immediately.
Yeah, within a month of their wedding, he was called on a proselyting mission to the southern United States.
But then, just 4 months later, the church did something highly unusual for that era. Lucy was called to serve right alongside him.
Which is incredible. They functioned as this tight administrative and spiritual unit. George even served as acting mission president for over a year.
And when they finally returned to Salt Lake City in 1894 and started a family, they eventually had 3 kids, Emily, Edith, and George Albert Jr. They built their household on this exact operational standard of service.
There is a specific Christmas morning story that I think perfectly illustrates how this functioned in practice.
Oh yeah, the Toy Story.
Right. So the daughters had just finished opening their presents, and George Albert sits them down and asks them to share some of their toys with children who had none.
Which is a nice thought, but then what happens?
Well, they didn't just give away old items. They willingly handed over brand new toys they had literally unwrapped minutes earlier.
That is, teaching kids to give away brand new Christmas toys is master-level parenting.
Truly, it's one thing to teach children the abstract concept of charity, but to ask a child to immediately part with a new gift, it proves that his personal creed wasn't just talk.
Right, his creed was, I would be a friend to the friendless and find joy in ministering to the needs of the poor.
Exactly. It wasn't a public relations slogan. It was the daily operating system of his household.
But of course, implementing that operating system was constantly hindered by his failing physical vessel. We really need to look at an incident from when he was 18 that permanently altered how he interacted with the physical world.
The railroad survey party.
Yeah, so he's 18, working on this survey party out in the desert, and the intense glare of the sun on the sands caused permanent, severe damage to his eyes. He lived the rest of his life with significant visual impairment.
Which is tragic because reading became a physically painful endeavor for him.
And for a man whose entire life path required deep scriptural study, massive amounts of administration, and constant communication.
It's a devastating structural barrier. It was a daily, inescapable discomfort.
And the physical barriers only magnified as his responsibilities escalated. Let's fast forward to 1903. He is 33 years old now, and his health is so poor he cannot even attend the October General Conference.
He's just stuck at home.
Right, and while he's at home, a visitor casually informs him that he has just been sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles.
Imagine finding out that way.
Right. He rushes down to the Salt Lake Tabernacle to verify the news, and sure enough, 2 days later, he's ordained in the Salt Lake Temple.
So he is handed this massive platform of spiritual authority while navigating a body that is actively breaking down. But the mechanics of his leadership become so fascinating right here.
How so?
He doesn't use his visual impairment as an excuse to step back, but he also doesn't ignore it. He essentially weaponizes his own trauma to solve structural problems for other marginalized people.
Oh, like with the Society for the Aid of the Sightless.
Exactly. From 1933 to 1949, he served as the president of that society. And he didn't just lend his name to a charity for good PR, he actively supervised the translation and publication of the Book of Mormon into Braille.
That's amazing. Think about the logistics required to accomplish that in the 1930s.
It's staggering. A sighted leader might feel pity for the blind, but a leader who actually experiences the daily isolation of vision loss understands the exact structural deficits that need fixing.
He recognized that spiritual isolation is just as debilitating as physical blindness.
Exactly. By overseeing that Braille publication, he applied that childhood lesson of cognitive accountability. He saw a marginalized group, he internalized their struggle, and he engineered a concrete, logistical solution to bridge the gap.
He literally spent decades translating his physical limitations into logistical empathy. And this all culminates super dramatically on May 15th, 1945.
This is a huge turning point.
Right. So George Albert Smith is now 75 years old. He is riding a train in the eastern United States when a railroad official wakes him up with urgent news. President Heber J. Grant has died.
So the mantle passes to him.
Yes. Smith immediately changes trains, rushes back to Utah, and assumes the role of the 8th president of the church.
And look at the context here. He takes command of a global organization at a moment when the entire world is fractured.
Right. World War II is ending. Europe is completely decimated.
And he is a 75-year-old, legally blind man whose body has been failing him since he was a kid.
And he knew it, too. During his first General Conference address as president, he stood before the congregation and said, I wonder if anyone else here feels as weak and humble as the man who stands before you.
He wasn't performing humility there.
No, not at all.
He was acknowledging the stark reality of his physical limitations. He knew exactly how frail he was.
Yet the output of his presidency is staggering. We have to look at the actual mechanics of what he accomplished.
He didn't just offer, theological comfort from afar. He mobilized the church's welfare program to send massive logistical assistance.
Because he understood that you cannot preach to a starving population. You have to feed them first.
Right, he used his authority to orchestrate this incredible transatlantic supply chain of compassion.
And he didn't just manage this from a comfortable desk in Salt Lake City. Despite his frailty, the records note that he traveled over 1 million miles in his lifetime to minister to people.
1 million miles across the late 19th and early 20th century.
Utilizing trains, boats, carriages. I mean, the physical toll that must have taken on him.
Unbelievable.
And in 1946, he became the first church president to visit the saints in Mexico, significantly expanding the active footprint of the church's leadership.
He really operated like a master architect managing two massive simultaneous projects. On one hand, he is aggressively building the international future of the church through welfare distribution and these global visits.
And on the other hand,
He is fiercely preserving its foundational past. He negotiated the purchase of the Joseph Smith Sr. farm in Palmyra, New York. And even going back to 1930, he established the Utah Pioneer Trails and Landmark Association.
right, they spent 2 decades placing over 100 monuments along the Pioneer Trek to the Salt Lake Valley. But why? Like, why put so much energy into monuments when the modern world was in such a state of crisis?
Because a community navigating a crisis needs an anchor. Monuments are basically structural memories. They remind a displaced or traumatized people that they come from a lineage of survival.
Oh, I see.
He gave them branches reaching into Europe and Mexico, but he ensured their roots were deeply set in the soil of their own pioneer history.
And he managed this huge architectural feat through the lens of that 5-year-old boy sitting in Brigham Young's office. He actually stated, "Wherever I have gone, I have found noble men and women," and he credited their companionship for his success.
He viewed global administration not as a mandate to rule, but as a logistical mandate to love.
Logistical mandate to love. I love that. It is the ultimate manifestation of empathy scaled to a global level, executed by a man who honestly had every physical excuse to just retreat inward.
And he just refused to do that.
He did. His million-mile journey concluded quietly, though. On his 81st birthday, April 4th, 1951, George Albert Smith passed away in his Salt Lake City home, surrounded by his children.
At his funeral, President David O. McKay delivered a summation of his life that I think just cuts to the core of his historical impact. He stated, "Truly, he was a noble soul, happiest when he was making others happy."
Happiest when making others happy. You know, when you look at your own challenges, your physical limitations, your anxieties, whatever barriers seem to disqualify you from making a significant impact, it is so easy to view them in the boundaries of your potential.
Absolutely. We assume we need that iron constitution to change the world. We view our fragility as this massive liability that just needs to be hidden or overcome before we can actually be of use.
But George Albert Smith's life provides a completely different blueprint. What if your specific vulnerabilities are not liabilities at all? What if they are the exact required tools for developing the empathy needed to change the world around you?
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.